Hi, I'm Sid Hunter, your host for this edition of Every Town and Village. As you may know from our previous shows in this series, we are presenting programs on various spiritual subject matters in the hope that we might make a contribution to the advancement of consciousness for all human beings and promote the highest spiritual principles. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us His Divine Grace, Srila Gopal Krishna Goswami, one of the spiritual masters or gurus of the Hare Krishna movement, and a governing body commissioner. Welcome to the show, Maharaj.
Hi, Sid.
Now, Maharaj, I understand you have been in charge of the Bombay Center for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness for a number of years now. Can you tell us how it all got started?
It was Srila Prabhupada's desire that an important preaching center be established in Bombay. There's a very interesting story in this connection. Srila Prabhupada was struggling to establish Krishna consciousness in India before he went to the West. And he was also preaching in Bombay. So once he was returning from the house of the owner of the Scindia shipping company, Srimati Moraji. She only stays a few blocks from our temple. And Srila Prabhupada passed by what is now known as the Hare Krishna Land. And he saw this beautiful land. At that time, it had a lot of trees in it. And he just expressed to the Lord that if the Lord desires, he may be able to build a very nice temple for the Lord. And Bombay being a very important city, it is also known as the gateway of India. Srila Prabhupada felt that if we had a very powerful preaching cultural center here, that would help in establishing Krishna consciousness and in bringing people towards Lord Krishna.
Let's take a look at that now. That's really something. Who designed it?
This was designed by one of Srila Prabhupada's Dutch disciples, Swami, who is also a very well-known architect. Srila Prabhupada gave him the guidelines as to what he wanted, and Swami then drew the plans, which were again modified and revised and directed by Srila Prabhupada. It has a very beautiful temple. The Radha Rasbihari deities preside over there, with deities of Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and an altar with deities of Gaur-Nitai, that's Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. They're very beautiful dioramas inside the temple on the side and in the courtyard, which depict the Krishna conscious philosophy. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Ji had desired that these dioramas be used to depict the Krishna conscious philosophy. So these dioramas are very popular. Then there are two towers which have about 60 rooms in them, and these rooms are being used for our life members around the world and other well-wishers of the society and those who may want to understand about Vedic way of life. The Bombay project also has a very nice restaurant in which we serve pure Krishna Prasad. Prasad is defined as foodstuff that is offered to God, and by the eating of which the living entity improves his intelligence. But this restaurant is very, very popular. People from all over Bombay come to eat over there.
And I understand you also have a theater there.
Yeah, we have a 400-seat theater called the Bhakti Kala Kshetra, which is known as the Center of Performing Arts. In the center, that's in the auditorium, we perform dramas, ballets, based upon the ancient Vedic scriptures and bring out the philosophy about the goal of human life. And over the years, we've had important cultural artists like Hema Malini, Vijayanti Mala, Hari Om Sharan, Purushottam Jalota, many important artists from Bombay and other parts of the world perform at our auditorium.
दुनिया के कोने कोने में महामंत्र गुंजाया महामंत्र गुंजाया.
What has the response been of the local residents there?
Oh, it's amazing. We get over 10,000 people every day to visit our temple. And on Sundays and other important holidays, there are at least 100 to 200,000 people who visit the temple. And on Janmashtami, we get close to 1 million people who come to the temple. So this is a very unique temple. People all over India are talking about it. In fact, very few people have seen a temple like this. That's why Srila Prabhupada's very unique design of having a temple and a strong cultural center right next to it. So we are happy that the facilities of the Bombay temple are attracting everyone towards the temple.
Well, the Indians really seem to appreciate your temple. Was it like that from the beginning?
Some people were trying to prevent the transfer of the land to our society.
For what reasons?
Well, there were many reasons, and obviously the real point was some of them wanted to cheat us. But Srila Prabhupada fought very vigorously, and he at no point gave up. We went through a series of battles till finally the land was transferred in the name of ISKCON. And after that, we had to go through a series of battles to get the permission to start the construction of the cultural center.
When the Hare Krishna movement first came to the West, there was a lot of skepticism, a lot of people that could not accept you or understand, especially because of the external dress, the shaven head, the robes. How was it received in India?
There was no cultural shock as the people in the West had experienced. But in India, people were deviating from the original philosophy as explained by the Lord. And the Indians could see that they were giving up something that was very valuable. Because India was ruled by the Britishers for a long time, the average Indian would attempt to imitate the West, the Britisher, as a sign of his advancement. And very little attention was being paid to his own culture, the culture in which he was born. So Srila Prabhupada bringing the foreign disciples to India was definitely very helpful in bringing home to the so-called modern Indians that this Vedic culture that they're trying to shy away from is something which is being accepted all over the world.
We have some interviews shot for Indian television of your life members in Bombay on that subject matter. Let's take a look at some of those now.
There exists a very large vested interest group in India which has come to monopolize and dominate religious institutions like temples, etc. This really has been the undoing of the Hindu religion, with the result that more and more Hindus have taken to conversions to other religions like Christianity, Islam, etc. And these vested interests have given their own interpretations to religious matters, religious principles, and what has been enunciated in epics like Bhagavatam or in Gita. They have tried to pose as agents of God on earth and have created a sort of an empire for themselves. And since any such enlightened movement like the movement that is envisaged by Sri Prabhupada could mean a bit of a threat to their own vested groups and interests, they are naturally opposed to this movement, and they have tried to vilify it, and they have tried to present it in as wrong a light as they could.
Unfortunately, I was away from India, and I left this Krishna consciousness for a while. I started following and checking with other types of religions, including Marxism. I became a member of the University of London Students' Union, Buddhist societies, checked also Christian teachings. And we, as Indians, were rather surprised that people in America could become so quickly Krishna conscious. But they knew that they were following the right, authentic and authorized movement, which is true love of God. Now, many people don't understand who is Lord Krishna, and therefore they get confused. In their confusion, they start assigning their own meanings. This happens even to the greatest of scholars we had in our country. They don't take Krishna as he is, and therefore they get into trouble.
It may be that due to my busy occupations, otherwise I have not been able to devote myself to the service of the Lord as every human being ought to do, more particularly the born Vaishnavas who are that way the followers of Lord Krishna. It was only a year back by now that I met with a very serious heart attack, and I then realized what frustration a man feels at that hour of the life when he otherwise thinks that he has led a very successful life. I felt the void, and that void possibly I can now fulfill.
I have visited this temple several times. It is beautiful. It is, the atmosphere is so peaceful where you can sit and meditate, and it's very clean. I love to go whenever I get time from my shooting and dances. I go very often there. Everybody should go and visit the temple. It is very beautiful. The atmosphere is lovely, and I wish everybody go every day to visit and will get the blessings of Lord Krishna.
Quite a display of awards. I understand she's the most famous actress in the country. You seem to have impressed a lot of important Indian people.
Prabhupada showed how valuable this Vedic culture was. People all over the world were taking to it, and through this he was encouraging the Indians to take to it.
What are the Indians appreciating most about the movement?
They're amazed how these Westerners could have given up these sinful activities and taken to Krishna consciousness, especially these young boys and girls. The Indians, as I said, were deviating from the religious scriptures themselves. Now they are seeing these Western boys and girls so strictly following the rules and regulations, giving up sense gratification with determination. Sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the living entity. One who engages in sense gratification becomes a killer of the soul. So the Indians have seen how wonderfully people all over the world are taking to this Krishna consciousness, and they began to realize that they have left something behind, that they could not identify what is beautiful, but the Westerners have acknowledged that. And after having seen the wide acceptance that this Krishna consciousness movement has obtained all over the world, this movement has penetrated not just into America as some people think. This movement has penetrated into every country of the world. And after they were explained the genuineness of this Vedic philosophy by Srila Prabhupada, they got attracted. And today we can see that the attraction has not diminished, but it is growing day by day. Day by day, more people are joining us. Also, we are seeing more and more Indian devotees are joining us. In fact, in most of our temples in India, most of the devotees are Indian. This goes to show that the Indians have faith, therefore they are joining. And Srila Prabhupada used to often tell us that our love for him would be proven by our desire to work together. So the Indians have seen that even though the Founder-Acharya left the planet in 77, the disciples are not fighting as to whom the property belongs. The disciples are still functioning exactly as they were when Prabhupada was on this planet and engaged in distributing Krishna consciousness. This really pleases them.
Well, let's see some of those devotees and hear a few more interviews from the life members in Bombay.
My husband and I have been associated with Prabhupada ever since he began this Krishna consciousness movement. He was always a godly, saintly man and with profound knowledge. And as my husband has already said, it has been very creditable indeed that this movement has spread all over the world. And all the credit goes to our dear Prabhupada, who has been greatly responsible for spreading this beautiful, wonderful movement all over the world.
My wife and I became life members, and we had right in this place, in our own house, a gathering where we invited our friends, and we made the other 7 life members. And I feel it is his great magnetic personality and his great knowledge, profound knowledge of Vedas that has attracted people from all walks of life.
I have had a rather checkered and varied career, but this has also had its own advantages. I was a teacher, a professor, a journalist. I have been all my life a social worker, and now I am the chief business executive of a big industrial group. But all this varied experience has given me an opportunity to see various facets of India's great culture and civilization. This great movement has gone up higher and higher in my estimation. There are many-sided activities in respect of developing performing arts in their Bhakti Kala Kshetra wing, the pujas they conduct, the cleanliness of the entire campus, the punctuality which marks every one of their programs, and as I said, more than anything else, the utter, total sincerity of living as they preach. These are things which have captivated my heart, and I am sure it has also captivated the hearts of thousands of discerning, discriminating, knowledgeable observers in India.
The basic philosophy that the Krishna consciousness movement is spreading throughout the world will definitely attract all those people who have the good of the people at heart. In fact, the modern society requires a peace of mind which in fact is lagging very much. Materially, people have advanced, but so far as the spiritual aspect is concerned, I don't think that they have paid much of an attention. The Indian culture basically gives you a kind of philosophy which is based on spiritualism that will give you peace of mind, which is very badly required for a very healthy society.
Now, here in the West, we have learned about and heard about so many yogis and gurus coming from India. Do the people in India have a distinction about your movement as opposed to other movements that emanate from India?
Unfortunately, very few people can discriminate, because one can only discriminate if one is an expert. If I'm not an expert on gold and you showed me a piece of gold, I could not really say whether it's real gold or not. So similarly, some may want to lump us in, saying that we are like the other cults, but our prayer is, don't lump us in. Evaluate our activities. See if we are deviating from the original instructions or not. And if we are deviating from the original instructions of Srila Prabhupada, then we can be corrected.
What was Srila Prabhupada's feelings about when the center was actually finished?
Unfortunately, Srila Prabhupada left the planet before we could formally open the temple in January of 1978. But Srila Prabhupada did have the privilege of living in his quarters on the 5th floor of the towers. He wasn't very well, but he lived there for a few weeks in 1977. And Srila Prabhupada was pleased that the project was almost complete. The construction of this project started in July of 1975, and the project was opened in the project was opened in January of 1978.
We have a videotape of a tour of Srila Prabhupada's quarters, hosted by Giriraj Swami, who I understand has been in Bombay since its earliest beginnings. Let's take a look at that now.
So this room was kept as a waiting room for people to sit in before they went to see Srila Prabhupada. Of course, now since Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, we're keeping these rooms as a memorial tribute to his divine grace. Then this is a Bhagavad Gita that Srila Prabhupada used when he was living in Vrindavan. It's published by the Gita Press and it's in Hindi. But actually there have been so many editions of the Bhagavad Gita, but in almost every case the translator or commentator has inserted his own ideas in the name of Bhagavad Gita. And thus the public in general has been deprived of the actual knowledge of the Gita as Krishna originally spoke it. Of Bhagavad Gita, called Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is now being published and distributed throughout the world. So these are Srila Prabhupada's personal quarters. Right here is the table where Srila Prabhupada used to sit and translate. Srila Prabhupada commented that when he was living in Vrindavan, Rupa Goswami personally requested him to write these books. So many times Srila Prabhupada would stay up the whole night at this table writing his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And now you can see that actually these books have been published in more than 26 languages of the world. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, Ishopanishad, Krishna, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Altogether, Srila Prabhupada wrote more than 80 books in a brief span of 12 years. So this is where Srila Prabhupada used to sit to meet people. He was actually a living example of the ideal person as described in the Vedic literatures. Therefore it is said that one should read the book Bhagavat and serve the person Bhagavat. So Srila Prabhupada used to sit at that table and write the book Bhagavat, and here he would give his association as the person Bhagavat to the conditioned souls desiring to go back to Godhead. Then this is the table where Srila Prabhupada used to take prasad. Srila Prabhupada once commented that when he was living in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar temple, he had one small room that was about 8 feet by 12 feet. And in one corner he used to translate, in another corner he used to sit, in another corner he used to take prasad. So Srila Prabhupada commented that his quarters here are just like his quarters in Vrindavan. Because in one corner he's translating, in another corner he's sitting, and in another corner he's taking prasad. So actually Srila Prabhupada was always very plain and simple. So although to our capacity we were able to offer him a more elaborate arrangement here in Bombay, but his life was the same, translating, speaking about Krishna, and taking Krishna prasad.
Can anyone come to the temple and observe and study Krishna consciousness?
Foreign tourists, students also regularly come and stay. Actually, the purpose of this guest house was to provide a facility where somebody would come and see the Vedic culture being practiced and study Vedic culture. And they've all been very pleased. In fact, anyone who stays in our guest house has to follow the same principles that we follow. Like he has to abstain from eating meat, fish or eggs in the guest house. He cannot engage in gambling or taking of intoxication. So we want to keep the purity even in the guest house, plus you can hear lectures and kirtans in the room all day. So the whole purpose is to create a spiritual atmosphere. So anyone who walks into the Hare Krishna Land, into the Hare Krishna project in Juhu, will examine the purpose of human life, will think about chanting Hare Krishna, will think about giving up sinful activities, and will think about establishing his relationship with God. That is the whole purpose of the Hare Krishna project at the Hare Krishna Land. And Sid, if you ever get a little time, you're also welcome to come and experience a very pleasant stay in the Bombay temple.
Well, I may take you up on that invitation. And I want to thank you for being on our show. And thank you for watching Every Town and Village.
Om Jai Radha Ras Bihari, Shri Jai Radha Ras Bihari, Kashta Haran Mangalmay, Kashta Haran Mangalmay, Darshan Sukhkari, Om Jai Radha Ras Bihari.